Hello there, my name's Scott and today I'm going to be doing a review on the Line LE which I received from www.vaporwall.com. Before I start though, I must point out I did receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review, but my opinion of the product remains true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, let's go straight ahead and show you what's in the pouch. Okay, so the Line LE will come in a little presentation pouch, and inside the pouch you will of course find the line and also throw in a spare plexiglass tank. Okay, so it's probably around 2.5, 3 years ago when I've done a review on the original Genesis line, and at the time it was a really nice atomizer, but if you're going to compare the quality of that original version to the sort of present day version, the difference in quality really is night and day. And it's nice to see they have improved in just about every department really, especially with regards to the positive and negative terminals. It's made out of stainless steel, not too sure what grade of steel has been used though. I have requested that information, and if I get it back in time I will put it on the screen here. It's 14mm in diameter, and from end to end it measures just 55mm. On the base you have your usual 510 threaded connection, so that means it's going to be compatible with just about anything out there these days. 510 is like a sort of pretty much standard fitting. And as it is quite a skinny sort of atomizer, just 14mm in diameter, it tends to look pretty good even on things like an Ego battery. And right in the middle there you have a brass centre pin. On the main body towards the base you're going to find some engraving which says Line LE, and then just above that the Vans Vape House company logo. And as you can probably tell, the main body has these 3 cutout windows which obviously allow you to see how much juice you got left in the tank. The tank itself will hold around 2.2 millilitres of e-liquid and is made out of what they call plexi, which I'm going to assume is plexiglass. And as far as I'm aware, plexiglass will react to known tank cracking e-liquid, so I would avoid using those if possible. The top cap has a 1mm air hole, so it's a relatively sort of tight draw, not too bad though. And on top you have space for a 510 drip tip, and I'm pleased to say that my favourite style of drip tips fit in there pretty much perfectly. Now the top cap is one of those ones where it's not held in place by an O-ring, it's actually screwed on. Nice good quality threads, everything screws together nice and smoothly. And as you can see, as the wick hole is right in the middle, you haven't got to worry too much about lining the air hole up in front of the wick. Now, like I said, one of the biggest improvements on the Line LE over the original version of the line is the fact that it now has regular sort of positive and negative terminals. On the original version, you didn't have things like this or screws, you just had 2 pieces of basically silver wire sticking up in the air, which you then had to wrap your candle around, and it did work, but it was definitely a weak point of the atomizer, let's put it that way. In the middle there you have a 3mm diameter wick hole, so quite a big old wick hole. It is isolated as well to help with getting rid of the old hot spots and things like that, and making setup generally a little bit easier. And just above that you have a fill hole. Now when it comes to setting up the Line LE, or any atomizer for that matter, different people are going to have different methods, and at the end of the day, whatever works for you, that is the correct way to do it. Now I have used it quite a lot with a cotton wool microcoil setup, and it does work really well, but for this video I will stick to the more traditional method of using the stainless steel mesh. Okay, so this mesh is 400, it's cut out at a length of 40mm by a width of 40mm, and then rolled it up to form a tube and oxidised it by holding it in a hot flame for around sort of 10-15 seconds, something like that. For my wire, I'm going to use some 0.30mm cantha, and I've already wrapped the coils around the wick because I found it to be just a little bit easier on this particular atomizer, because you don't have a lot of room to sort of manoeuvre. And as you can see, I've wrapped around sort of 5 coils. Okay, so to install it, I'm just going to take the wick and start off by inserting it through the wick hole, and then pushing it all the way down to the bottom. I'm then going to grab hold of the lower wire here, wrap it underneath the negative terminal, hold it in place, and then just tighten it up with a flat-headed screwdriver. And then just repeat the process on the top terminal. Once the two terminals are done up nice and tight, you can then take out a little screwdriver or a pin and just tidy up the coils if need be. And then to remove the excess pieces of wire, just grab hold of it, give it a little bit of a spin whilst applying a bit of tension, and it should snap off nice and clean. And incidentally, I've got the syringe down the middle of the wick there just to help strengthen things up as you're going through the process of installing the wick and the coil. But once everything's done, you can just remove that. Now, before filling out the tank with e-liquid, it's always really important to make sure your coils are going to light up evenly at the same time and without any hot spots, otherwise you're just not going to get a nice vape. Now, normally I do show you the process I go through to eliminate any of those sort of problems, but on this occasion, it seems to be firing up pretty much perfectly straight away, so I've got nothing to actually show you, unfortunately. However, if you do get a problem like an unevenly glowing coil or a hot spot, for example, then all I do is I'll take a little pin out, give the coil a very gentle nudge up or down, pulse the switch a few times, on and off, on and off, on and off, and 9 times out of 10 that's enough to get it working perfectly. Now, when it comes to filling up the tank with e-liquid, it can sometimes be a little bit of a pain in the arse, especially if you've got a bottle like this. Now, if you've got something like this, it is possible to fill the tank up like that, but definitely far, far easier if you've got a bottle with like a needle nose on the end of it, or if you happen to have a syringe, which I'm going to use here just to obviously speed things up and make a little bit less mess. Give that a few seconds for it to wick, and hopefully we should get some vapour. Okay, so to finish off, you just need to attach the top cap, and as the top cap is a screw-on top cap and the wick hole is right in the middle, you haven't got to sort of worry too much about lining the air hole up in front of the wick. So you just take that and screw it all the way down, and whack your drip tip in the end now, and that's it, you're good to go. Okay, so that is the Line LE. Let's go ahead, see what it vapes like. Okay, so that was the Line LE, and what I'll do now is go ahead and show you in action. So I'm going to be using it with a Silver Fox, which is a Genesis hybrid made by the same company. I did a review on this quite some time ago now, but when they sent me out the line, they also sent out a 510 top cap for the Silver Fox, so it turns it from a Genesis hybrid into a little regular 14500 mod. The 14500 battery is just come off the charger, so it should be reading around 4.2 volts. The resistance of the coil has come out at 1.3 ohms, so not too low, but not particularly high either. I didn't want to go too low because it is only a 14500 battery I'm using. And the tank has been filled up with some 18mg strength tobacco flavoured e-liquid, and it's just a PG based e-liquid. Okay, so this is the Line LE. Okay, so as you can see, like vapor wise, getting a good amount of vapour out of it. I don't think it would be quite enough to satisfy the cloud chasers out there, but a respectable amount of vapour nonetheless. But obviously just bear in mind the amount of vapour you're going to get will come down to your own personal setup with regards to what sort of voltage or wattage you're pushing through the coil, the resistance of the coil, the type of e-liquid. All those things will play a big part in our vapour production, but nevertheless, with the setup I've got here, getting a pretty good amount of vapour. Now, like I said, I'm using a 14500 battery. They haven't got a massive sort of amp limit on it, so I can't really sort of go too low. If I wanted to, I could put this on I don't know, like a DNA 30 device, put a lower resistance coil on there, ramp the old wattage up and probably get a lot more vapour than what you're seeing here. But this is how I've been mainly using it on the Silver Fox, but I have been mainly using it with a microcoil cotton wool setup, and I've really enjoyed it like that, to be quite honest. Just sort of 10 wraps of 0.30 gauge cathode. I've never actually bothered to measure what the resistance was. It's probably not that low anyway, probably quite high, probably higher than this actually, but it was, vaping really nice, plenty of flavour, plenty of vapour in that as well. But I wanted to sort of set it up with a more sort of traditional method of the stainless steel mesh wick, because I think that's what they sort of are more geared towards, to be quite honest. So the air hole size on it is only 1 mm, so you are getting a pretty tight draw out of it. You know, it's not overly tight, but still pretty tight. And again, that sort of plays a part in our vapour production. If the air hole size was, say, 1.2 mm, you know, a little bit larger, the draw will be that little bit looser, and you would definitely get a little bit more sort of vapour as well. But you know, as it stands, it's you know, pretty good vapour production with this sort of setup and a sort of a relatively tightish draw. Flavour though, getting plenty of flavour. No, it's I'm not too sure why, but it's one of those things I always seem to forget mentioning when I do a review on an atomizer. Is the flavour. I get a lot of people say, well, what about the flavour? And for me personally, no matter what sort of atomizer you get, if it's set up correctly, you should get good flavour. So that's why I tend to sort of skip over it. But you know, flavour-wise, getting plenty of flavour. I'm using my regular sort of Titan tobacco flavoured e-liquid in there, and it's hitting the spot. The vapour-wise, in the sense of the warmth, it's quite a nice sort of warm vape really. I'm not overly keen on cold vapes, but I'm not overly keen on scorching hot vapes either. It's just a nice sort of warm temperature. But again, that will sort of come down slightly to how you got it set up. If you've got a high resistance coil in there, it's going to be a little bit cooler. If you've got a lower resistance coil in there, it's going to be a little bit hotter. And again, down to your voltage or your wattage settings as well. When it comes to setup, now if you use the sort of more traditional method, or the way that I would normally sort of set up a Genesis atomizer anyway, and install the wick first and then attach your wire to the negative and then start wrapping your coils, you're probably going to find it quite tricky, especially if you've got big old banana hands like myself, because there's not a great deal of room to manoeuvre. It is a pretty sort of slim atomizer, and also the atomizer deck is quite small as well. But if you wrap your coils around the wick first, drop the wick in and then just attach it, you know, it really is very, very simple. And I'd say over the time I've had it now for about, well, at least 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. And I've probably done about, well, I've done 3 micro coils with the cotton wool. And this was the second time I've done it with the stainless steel mesh wick. And I can't actually remember ever having any sort of hot spot. Obviously, if you're doing a micro coil setup, you do have to sort of heat it up, squeeze the old coils together with a pair of tweezers, heat it up and squeeze it. But with the mesh one, I didn't have any problems this time, and I don't recall having any problems the last time I've done it either. But you know, if you do, it's just a case of pulsing the switch, giving the coils a little bit of a nudge, and 9 times out of 10 that gets it rocking pretty much straight away, really. So if you drop your wick in there with the coils already wrapped, it's just a case of attaching it to the 2 terminals, a tiny little adjustment maybe, tidy your coils up, and that's it. So for me personally anyway, it's been a very nice and easy one to get going. If you do like the old micro coils and cotton wool, you've got quite a nice bit of space there to be able to get your tweezers in and give the coils a good squeeze if you set it up in the same way that I do. Some people sort of obviously use a blowtorch and do the coils that way, but I like to install it and just sort of do it when it's actually already attached to the atomizer. But you know, different folks, different strokes. Build quality wise, like I said in the video, you know, the first original line that I reviewed, which was around sort of 2.5, 3 years ago, and I believe that was the second Genesis atomizer I reviewed. The first one was the Genesis Maxi, I think, which again was made by the same company. And these were like the first Genesis atomizers to become sort of slightly more widely available. I think there's a few people who made sort of homemade ones, which, you know, looks pretty awful, made out of sort of bottle caps and things like that, whereas this was the first one that sort of went into production, but again, still on a very sort of small scale. And the difference in quality between that original one I reviewed a few years back and this one, you know, really is night and day. Like I said, the biggest change is the fact this has sort of the regular sort of positive and negative posts. On the original one, you just had sort of 2 pieces of silver wire sticking up, and you had to sort of anneal all your cantwheel first and then actually wrap it around. And what would happen is after a while, any sort of slight bend on that bit of wire, and eventually it would sort of snap off and you have to send it off to repair. Whereas with this now, you know, they've obviously moved with the times and they've got the proper posts on there. Nice big thick sort of screws as well, with a flat-headed screwdriver. Pretty much every household's got a flat-headed screwdriver, so you know, a big improvement there. I think there has been another line in between the original and this one as well, the Line V2, but I may well have reviewed it, but to be quite honest, I can't remember at all. You know, after a while it sort of blurs into a bit of a haze, so I don't think I've reviewed it anyway, but there's definitely been a version in between these two, so but I can only compare it to the original one and this one here, because I don't remember ever trying the Line V2. I might have done, but not too sure. But it's a very nice atomizer. It's nicely made. It is well, it comes in two finishes. I've got the mirror polished version, which is obviously a great big sort of fingerprint magnet, and it does match up nicely though with my Silver Fox, which is also a nice fingerprint magnet. But they do have a brushed version as well. I think they call it machined, which I'm going to assume means brushed. And obviously for me personally, I do prefer a nice brushed finish, so that would suit me personally more. But again, you know, whatever floats your boat really. So, you know, it's a nice atomizer. It vapes nice, you're getting plenty of flavour. You are getting what I would class as a satisfactory amount of vapour, a good amount of vapour really, but obviously in terms of cloud chasing, it looks probably a little bit on the wimpy side, but again, it will come down to how you've actually got it set up. But you know, it's just a nice atomizer that works well and looks pretty good as well. So not too sure what else I can really tell you about it. If you do fancy trying one, go along to www.vaporwall.com. Now, Vaporwall is actually more known as a forum, but if you go to vaporwall.com, you will find a link at the top that says shop. If you click on that, it goes through to the actual Van's Vape House shop. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping. See you later.